What's up guys, it's Chase here from Renderite and we're back with another Twinmotion Friday exercise which we're going to jump straight into. So we're going to go import, going to click open, import. I've got my file already. Going to delete the starting base and landscape. Going to select my model and press F. Pressing F centers the camera to the model. Now we're just going to go and set up our media. So we're just going to click a new image. On the right hand side, we're going to adjust our resolution to 3000 by 3000. Then we're going back to the camera settings and adjusting our focal length. So we're just looking for a nice angle. Under details, we're going to click parallelism and we're going to adjust the vignette, sharpness, and chromatic aberration. It's going to minimize that. I'm going to scroll up to local exposure and enhance the highlight reduction. Now I'm just going to go through and delete any models or foliage that I don't want in my scene. Once we are done deleting unused models, we're going to start by placing some materials. So the first material that we're going to place is grass. So it's going to scroll down and select a grass material. I'm just going to apply this lawn grass here. So I'll just place that to my ground. Update my image, and then I'm going to also place some asphalt. So I'm just searching for some asphalt that I can use. I'm just going to use this rough asphalt here. So I've increased the scale, and that's all I'm going to do for the asphalt material. I'm going to also look for a concrete material. So I'm just going to scroll down. I'm going to select this concrete pavement. I'm also going to increase the scale of this one as well. And I'm going to randomize the UV. So I've updated my image again. I'm just going to quit my media mode. I'm also going to look for a plaster material that I'm going to apply to the white material on the build. I'm just going to place the plaster coating O2 and increase the scale slightly of that one as well. You can also adjust the stretch on X and Y and then manipulate it with the scale. I've also just applied glass to my building. And now I've just fast forwarded this process up and I'm going through and applying the plaster coating to the rest of the building. Moving on to the roof material. So I've just selected brushed aluminium and I'm going to change the color to black. Once I've done that, I'm just going to select my image to see what it looks like. It's looking quite good. Just going to quit my media mode again. I'm going to go through and start deleting these plinths on the top of the roof here. So I'm going to speed this process up, but I'm going to go through and delete each one of these. So once that's complete, we're going to start placing some grass down here. So in my paint tool under populate, I've just added lawn 01 and increased the density. Now I'm reducing the diameter of the paint tool and I'm just painting some grass in this area. Once this has been completed, I'm going to go to environment settings, scroll down to HDRI environment and just enable that. I'm also going to select the backdrop HDRI option. So at the moment it's come up with a black screen. So if this happens in your scene and you don't know what to do, you can actually just scroll down in the settings here and go down to details, and then you can click center backdrop. So that will center your backdrop in the center of your camera. And now I'm just adjusting the size and height offset of my HDRI. So I'm going to Polyhaven to search for an HDRI that I can use. So I'm just going to start scrolling down and I'm going to look for a overcast HDRI. So I'm just using this overcast soil pure sky one. It's the best one that I could find for my job that I'm doing. So I'm just setting that to 8K and I'm downloading the HDRI file. I'm just going to quit my media mode, and I've just noticed an issue with my materials here. So these little bits down the front should be plaster as well. So I'm just going to go through and adjust that. Once that has been complete, we're going to go through and apply a timber texture to these slats on the outside. So I'm just going to use the Twinmotion material, and I'm going to use the Olive 02G. And I'm just going to increase the scale of that one. It's kind of a generic timber material that doesn't have too much grain in it, so it works quite well. So I'm just applying that to all the locations where the timber needs to be applied. In your case it might be different, as everyone's design and process is different. So once that's complete, we're moving on to placing the brick facade. So I'm just going to go through and download this brick facade here. So I've applied that, and I'm just going to increase the stretch on X and Y, or decrease the stretch on X and increase it on Y, and then increase the scale. Moving on to our next brick material. So I'm going to use the curated stone facade for this one, and I'm just going to increase the scale again, minimize the detail panel, and I'm going to scroll down to normal, open the details and turn on parallax. So with the intensity slider here, you can see the difference. So it just kind of creates that illusion of a 3D material. And then that's just the height map reference plane, but I'm just going to leave that as it is. And I'm also going to increase the ambient occlusion, which you can see there. I'm also going to go to my grass and increase the dryness. Just takes that saturation out of the grass. Now we're going to move on to placing some vegetation. So I'm going to scroll down and use some of the new Twinmotion trees here. So I'm going to use the lodgepole pine. Once you have your vegetation loaded in the scene, you can start placing it around. So I was going to just place them individually, but I thought may as well utilize the area tool. So I'm just going to go populate area, and then I'm just going to start drawing my area in where the vegetation will be placed. So I'm basically just creating a rectangle and increasing the path tension. Then I'm just going to drop my lodgepole pine into the area tool. So already you can see that looks quite good. And now I'm just going to go through here and play around with some of the settings. So I've clicked on asset properties, and I will increase the age of the trees. I'm going to scroll down and turn snap to surface off, and then adjust the height offset. So now you can kind of see that shaping up, which looks quite cool. going to adjust the height offset a little bit more just to push the trees up. So I'm just going to select my area tool and adjust it a bit, just move it down. And then I am also going to increase the scale of the trees. Now that I've placed my trees, I'm just going to adjust some of the HDRI settings. So I'm going to increase the intensity to 100. Then I'm going to select my HDRI file that I downloaded earlier. Now that we have that added, we're going to move on to adjusting the ground now. So we have our ground here. I'm just going to go up to the panel above and adjust the pivot. So you can actually move the pivot of the 3D model. And then I'm just going to bring it up to be in line with the asphalt. So once we have done that, we're going to go and add concrete to this. So I'm just going to find a concrete material that I can add to the starting ground here. I've selected the exposed aggregate concrete, which I've applied to my starting ground. I'm going to start placing some grass material on these now. So I'm looking for a wild grass material, something that kind of blends in with the vegetation. So I'm just scrolling down and I'm going to download this clover patches on grass and the dried grass on moss. So I'm probably just going to use the clover patches on grass as the color is a lot greener and it will match better. So I'm just going to apply that to the grass material there. Then we're going to move on and we're going to start placing some cars in our scene. So in the user library that I have a cars folder with a few different cars in here. I'm going to go to Toyota and I'm just going to add in this Toyota Supra here. Once that's added, I'm just going to go through and adjust the paint and a few other things. Cool, so that's looking real nice now. We're just going to move on to applying some decals now. So we're just going to go down to street and we're going to look for some painted lines here. So we're just going to place a white road line. So once that I have that placed in my scene, I am just going to drag that to the side of the road here just to recreate white lines on a road to add some realism. Once I have that, I'm just going to duplicate them across to the other side. And then I will also add some in the middle. Just like that. Now I'm going to add some vegetation. So I'm just going to download this French tamarisk tree and a golden willow here, as these look quite nice bushes. So once I download it, I'm just going to place them in my scene and decrease the age. And then I'm just going to add the golden willow as well. And just chop and change, play around with the rotation and size of your bushes and trees to add some variation. Even here I have just some floating bushes to drive up the side of the camera. Once we've gone through and placed our bushes / trees there, we're going to move on and start placing some street lamps. So I'm just going to go under Objects, City and Streetlights, and then I'm going to place this enticing street lamp. So it's rather big here, but we're just going to decrease the size of that. Once we've decreased the size of that, we're just going to drag some copies across. Once that's complete, we're going to move back to placing some vegetation on the other side. So we're just going to drag some copies of the French tamarisk and golden willow. And then we're just going to go through and place some of these plants around the street lamp that we have here. When we've done that, we're going to select all 4 of them, and then we're just going to drag a copy to the other side. So we're just going to start placing some more vegetation out the front of these houses here. So I'm going to place the French tamarisk again, and I'm just going to place it on these little islands here, and I'm just going to rotate to create some variation. I've also downloaded the alder tree and I've placed those in there as well. I've got 2 sizes. I've got a smaller, younger one and a larger, bigger one. And now I'm just going through and adding some ling heather. So we're just going to go through and just fill around the street lamps with these plants, and also in these little bits here. Once we've done that, we're going to select them all and we're going to change the color of those. And then I'm just going to duplicate the golden willow and drag it across through to the other parts. Now it's starting to shape up quite nice. We're going to move on and we're going to start placing some birds in our scene. So I've typed bird and I'm going to change to Sketchfab and just go through here and look for a bird model. Maybe add flying to find a flying bird. So I'm just going to use this basic flying bird here. I'm just going to download that and drag it into my scene. Once that's been created, I'm just going to zoom in on it and adjust it. So I'm going to create a few duplicates of this to create like a flock of birds. So I'm just going to duplicate a few of these and adjust the color to black. Once I have these placed, I'm going to place them in the sky. So you can see now it adds some detail to my scene with some birds flying in the background, which looks quite cool. I'm just going to duplicate that group again and bring a copy below, just to create a bigger flock of birds there. Cool. Now we're going to move on. So for some reason my screen recording kind of failed. I was adding in a Megascans plant and yeah, the recording shut off and I wasn't aware of it. But in that meantime, I've gone through and I've placed some rock scatter here, just using the area tool. And they're just generic Twinmotion rocks. And I also placed a white Audi over there and some wall lights up here. But I haven't finished that process yet, so we're going to continue going through and duplicating these. And these wall lights were just added using my user library. So I created these wall lights a couple of years ago and saved them to my user library, and I've used them ever since in other jobs and stuff like that. So it's cool to save models that you create, because you can just use them again from your user library, which is quite cool. So once we've done that, we are just going to go through. I've also placed these ferns that I didn't tell you about, which I lost in the recording as well. So I'm just going to go through and add some here. I'm going to move on now. So we have our image here. We've got our color grading. I've increased the contrast to 60 and the saturation to 50. Go back into the camera here and I'm just adjusting the temperature. So I'm actually just sliding this until I find a right amount, which is probably around 7,000. And I'm just going to probably keep the shadow boost where it is. Don't want to make the shadows too dark. Just going to scroll down and just check my settings here, which is all good. And I've got my bloom intensity, which doesn't change much, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. And I'm just going to decrease the lens flare because we don't need that. We're going to go ahead and place some leaves on the ground now. So I'm just going to use the hydrangea leaves that you'll see here. So they have the big leaf hydrangea ground leaves, which I'm going to add into my scene and just populate below the trees. So once that's done, I'm just going to adjust this tree here to show some variation. And I'm also going to adjust the color of that. So now that our scene is complete, we are going to select our media. So we're going to click export, click image and the plus sign, and then we're going to select our media. Click details, and then we're going to turn the refinement to high and start export. And here's our outcome. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.